welcome to today's episodes of the Dive Into Reiki podcast. Today we're talking about why take for the first time or receive a Reiki 2 class. I did a similar episode in September back when I resat my Shimpiden with Francine. Today is actually with some of my students here in New York and not so here in New York, as you will see. And they're talking a little bit about their experience. I will do a little bit of an intro with my point of view, and then you will see how they're sharing their experience. Some of them are receiving for the second time, some of them already are teacher, and then there is one student who is coursing Reiki 2 for the first time. So their point of view are really complementary and they're really interesting. As I asked you in September, when they comment, please take the takeaways as a Reiki 2. Sometimes they mention me or their experience with my class, but this applies to any person really coursing Reiki 2 with any teacher. It may just switch a little bit because obviously I teach a very Japanese style stuff. So I would like to start with a little intros. Why do we take Reiki 2 for the first or the second time, right? So a lot of time we've seen Reiki 2 as a professional, as like becoming a professional practitioner. And that's a myth I would like to bust right here, right? Reiki 2 is just giving you tools to go deeper into your spiritual practice. And then when you deepen the practice and get more experience, it does open the lane for you to go perhaps professional. But you can take a Reiki 2 even if it's your personal practice or you still don't know if you want to do a Reiki 3 or you ever want to charge for a session. That has nothing to do with that. So what you're going to learn in a Reiki 2 class, and what you probably learn if you're listening to this and already course these levels, are 3 symbols. And these symbols represent two kinds of energies and one kind of state of mind. You're also going to learn how to do remote sessions. And they may give you, depending on the teachers, a few tools for professional training. But really, really the objective is the symbols and learning how to do remote sessions. If you study in a traditional Japanese style, it's going to be easier for you to integrate a Reiki 2 as the evolution of Reiki 1. In Western systems, it's more like giving you more tools, and they're not so much building on top and deepening the tools you already have. It's more like adding to your toolbox, right, for different things. And I'll go deeper into that a little bit. I think first of all, I want to study like the timing of Reiki 1 and Reiki 2. So usually Reiki 1, you will take Reiki 1 and practice to 3 to 6 months and to lay your foundation and then build Reiki 2 on top of that. But often, and that has a lot to do with like, there are not that many teachers or like space rental or dates. Basically, we're offering Reiki 1 and Reiki 2 on a weekend. If you can avoid, if you have any other alternative in your city, wherever you are, in your town, to do it separately, I would really encourage you so, or even take just one day of the weekends and then take the second day of the weekends, 3-4 months apart. And the reason is, it's not like it's not going to work, but you get probably, I don't know, like 5 or 6 very important tools / techniques / insight, whatever you want to call it, on Reiki 1. And then you get even more the following day. So it's just a lot of information. And I talk from experience because I retook Reiki 1. My first Reiki 1 doesn't even count. It was like so short and bad. I took Reiki 1 and Reiki 2, and there were so many tools. I couldn't come up with a daily practice that worked because I didn't know where to begin and what to stick to. So I was like, practicing things randomly, very confused. I also didn't process all the information. It was so much that I didn't retain a lot of that information. Again, if that's your choice and you prefer to get like, a Band-Aid wrap and do 1 and 2, it works for some people. But if you do so, perhaps focus for the first 3 months on the Reiki 1 part of the studies and then on the Reiki 2. The reason is not to slow down your advancement. It's not like, like to reduce your power. But you have to see Reiki 1, Reiki 2, and Reiki 3 as a house. So Reiki 1 is the foundation, Reiki 2, the second floor, Reiki 3, the third floor. So when you course Reiki 1 and 2 in a weekend, you're going to end up practicing probably more the Reiki 2 part because it's also kind of exciting. There are symbols, like you're hovering, and there's like a lot of things. And you may not practice the foundation. So you end up with a shaky practice, right? Because at the end, the foundation is really understanding the Reiki precepts, the very basic protocol. There is a reason we do the very basic hands-on protocol without intuition for at least a month or 2, right? So there is a reason why Reiki 1 is there, right? Like, so you really want to spend some time with Reiki 1, and it's also understanding in Japanese tradition, repetition is what brings the depth, not the amount of tools. So then when you go into Reiki 1 with the perception of like, okay, let me see and repeat this, to see how deep I can go, right? My sensei has a beautiful sentence. She says, kata is a series of movement. It's almost like a technique in martial arts. It's a series of movement that depict a story or a battle. And you may have like, I don't know, it's like less than a minute each kata. But she says, I've been repeating the same kata for over 30 years. It's the same kata, but every time I experience it and practice it, it reveals something new. So that's why I encourage like people, take your Reiki 1 for 3, 6 months, whatever feels right, and then take Reiki 2 and then practice those tools, right? Because in Japan, it is Reiki, and in Reiki in general, the more you practice, the more insights you get, and the more you practice the same thing, right? You start getting all those layers of richness. So then when you get your Reiki 2, you have a very solid foundation. Not only that, if you study a little bit more of the Japanese style, you get a little bit less confused, because every level is really about bringing that heavenly energy and earth energy together and open the heart to interconnection and non-duality. So when you finish your Reiki 2, and you can also like compare tools, right? So in Reiki 1, we have Joshin Kokyoho, which is really a meditation about building the earth energy, your hara, that grounding. So, and then in Reiki 2, you have the first symbol. These two guys are building towards the same kind of energy. So when you leave a Reiki 2 in the Japanese style, you can either practice Joshin Kokyoho or meditate with the first symbol, right? So like you can almost organize your practice, and it's a lot simpler to keep and organize your daily practice, right? You don't feel like, oh, I'm missing this because I'm not practicing this symbol, I'm not practicing that. Your teacher should be able to lead you and to say, okay, this in Reiki 2 kind of groups with this in Reiki 1, or the way you add to it, and organize your daily practice in a way that makes sense. And that way you're deepening, right? You're deepening the understanding. For example, we're talking about Joshin and symbol 1. You're deepening your understanding of the earth energy, of that grounding, and then realizing there is a lot more to earth energy, than you think about, and a lot more layers than you expect. So that is also, so when you're studying a Japanese lineage, it's also easier. When you study with a Western lineage, I really encourage you to, I know a lot of times they only use symbols to prepare for the sessions or with the clients. I would really encourage you to also practice and meditate with the symbols with yourself. And you can find online ways to meditate with the symbols to really discover the richness of that energy. And then you're going to say, oh, that feels like this, or you can identify with certain chakras. And it's going to also make it a little bit easier to feel all like part of a whole, versus you having like a toolkit of things and when do I use what, right? It becomes a little bit like overwhelming. So I really, really, really encourage you, take your time with every level. And then a lot of people, and I think what's happening to me lately is like I get a lot of receipts from people who are my students from Reiki 3 who are going to teach. And also people from other modalities, for example, who are more Western, they're sitting to see, okay, what is this? How do you teach perhaps a more Japanese, just out of curiosity, right? So receiving Reiki 2, I've resat Reiki 2 myself a couple of times as well when I was starting to learn how to teach. It's a good idea if you perhaps haven't taught a lot, don't have a lot of teaching experience. You took your Reiki 3 level, and then you're like all excited, you want to teach, but it may be like, okay, how do I teach the symbols? How do I teach remote healing sessions, right? How do you teach people something that is so non-physical, that is, really, how do you like make people feel it, believe in it, trust in the system so they can practice this? So I sat with one of my Reiki Masters teachers here in New York who was teaching Reiki 2, got some insights, and I always try to receive with different teachers. I even take classes online with other teachers to learn some stuff like, oh, wow, look at the way they present that material. Or look at the way they incorporate people, they engage people asking questions, right? So you get tips from here or there. So if you're teaching and you're probably new at teaching, I really encourage you to sit perhaps Reiki 1 or Reiki 2 with other teachers that may not even be yours, or talk to your teacher and sit with them. I, for example, offer a discount to my students, right? If you graduated Reiki 3 with me, you're going to probably receive 1, 2, or 3 at half the price. And I do that because my students actually, usually when they receive is when they're ready to teach. So how can you find ways to receive that perhaps are also wise for your budget? We know times are not always easy, and also prices are going up with inflation. So it's becoming harder to sit in as many classes as we would like. Another option is perhaps you see your first Reiki 2 in person, and then you receive it with it online because you already had the energetic experience. And perhaps what you want is perhaps some people just see how they present the material, right? I will always recommend to sit for the first time the levels in person if possible. You really want to experience the energy of the symbols in person, practice in a group. And also I know we're doing online communities, But for example, in this last Reiki 2, there was a beautiful community going on, like, supporting each other. And you're going to see that in the interviews that follow. And you're also going to see there are 4 people, 3 of them already had Reiki Master, 1 not. And they all had different objectives in receiving Reiki 2. So something that may inspire you as well to do this process. And I think also that is it. If you have any questions about Reiki 2, I'm always, always happy for you to reach out. If you're a patron, you can obviously message me through the platform or send me a question for the Q&A. If you're not a patron and your question is very short, I'm always happy to answer DMs on Instagram, Dive Into Reiki, or via email. And you can find that on my website, diveintoreiki.com. But mostly what I would love for you to keep in mind after you see these beautiful interviews with these beautiful humans is the importance of practicing, right? I know we're said that we are tuned to the symbols in the class. That is probably the point of view of most lineages. But the richness of the symbol comes from practicing it. And just think about it about cooking, for example, right? We don't get really familiar on how the spices work and how they combine with each other unless we really practice tasting the spices together, tasting the spices when they're under heat together, combinations. And then we become really good cooks that can layer flavors and do these amazing, extraordinary recipes. But we cannot really, really, really work with the symbols if we only practice perhaps once every so often, or we got an attunement from the teacher and we think we have them. And I'm gonna leave this with my oops. I always ask the oops of other people. And today I'm gonna end my section of this podcast with my own oops. When I took that first Reiki 2 class, that was like really almost like, come on, we have a lot of material, like let's do it. It was so rushed. I was very proud of myself because I felt I understood the symbols like no one else. And for me, because my family lives in Europe, I always have to have an international dial code, which now with cell phones and WhatsApp is not so common. So in my head, basically every of these symbols were basically like a code to tap into an energy. And obviously, especially the distance symbol was this distance healing thing. Obviously, as you practice with the symbols and you deepen your practice, this is a very naive way of seeing the symbols. It worked for me at the beginning, right? At least they didn't feel so threatening or so like magical. So it was very easy for me to start using them because of that vision. But obviously the symbols represent a lot more, right? The first symbol representing that earth, the second representing that heaven, and then meeting at the heart and creating that third symbol that is deeply interconnected and full of compassion, right? There are a little bit of the precepts layered into symbols. So that was my oops. And before I send you to the beautiful interviews, I also want to remind you that, practicing together is really, really incredible. Try to check for Reiki circles near you. Try to practice with friends, accountability partners. But really what brings us that in the Reiki system is practice. And if you are open to practicing online, remember to check my Patreon, Dive Into Reiki. You can just use it to support the podcast. It's just $3 a month. Or for $9 a month, you actually get one Q&A session, 1 hour session, access to all the replays of morning meditations, and early access to all the interviews. And then there is another level, and you get one extra class that practices more at the Reiki 2 level, and it's called the Deep Diver. So you get a little bit more class, but in general, you get from 2 to 3 classes, and you get around 10 meditations a month and a lot of information. So check it out. It's patreon.com/dive into Reiki. And without further ado, I leave you with these beautiful humans that will share their experience in my Reiki 2 class.
So my name is Mark Shimnoski. So I started sitting and doing Reiki around 2016, but I was not really, my spiritual practice started about 20 years prior when I started meditating in Tibetan Buddhist centers. So while I didn't know it, about 20 years ago, I was meditating at a meditation center, a Buddhist center, and I met a woman named Kazuko who was living in one of the back rooms of the building. And everybody said she was a healer. And so I said, okay, I'm going to sit with you and have a session. I lay down just as you would do during a Reiki session, but she never said anything about Reiki. But now that I look back 20 years ago, I had a wonderful experience with it, but she never told me it was Reiki, but I pretty much think that was the first time I got exposed to hands-on healing. So I completed Shimpadin about a year ago. Shimpadin for me really brought me closer to every aspect of Reiki. I really took the precepts much more seriously afterwards. the symbols and the chanting. Franz is my main teacher, so he basically, after Shimpiden really clicked for me, I started reading his books. I get his daily quotes every day, so I'm always going a little bit closer to his understanding of Reiki and how it intersects with Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism. So yeah, that's been how Shimpiden has changed. I've become a much more devoted person to Reiki. I definitely doing hands-on healing just about every day. So all main aspects of Reiki are something that I touch base with every day. So resitting Reiki 2 was important to me because the first time was just getting a grasp on symbols and what they looked at, what mantras, what chokure meant. And the second time around, I was like, I want to catch like the nuances of Reiki 2. I want to know about what does the energy feel like when you're getting the transmission. So the second time I was like much more into my body. I was much more grounded. And I felt like Nathalie was able to help me really dive deeper into what the symbols meant. That the energetic quality of Reiki 2 is something that you have to come back to all the time in your life. You cannot intellectually understand the Reiki symbols. They are something that is experiential. And for that purpose, you can basically retake the second level of Reiki infinite amounts of time and always experience something different. I would say that is my big piece of advice for other people, that if you're going to think about resitting Reiki 2, I would say absolutely, because the energetic experience of the heaven and the earth and the Hansha Shonen can be changed every time you try to experience it. That the Reiki 2 symbols are infinite pretty much when it comes to experiencing them. And some people can say, well, I intellectually understand Reiki 2, I don't need to take it again. And I would argue with them very much so that you do need to take this class over and over again because it is experiential and you can't just get the gist of it in an idea or a thought. I would say that Reiki has brought me into my body and taught me that while you can have a very good meditation practice as a Buddhist or a meditator in general, Reiki concentrates on meditation as in addition to having an energetic quality. And to really watch where you're at energetically during the day is something that Reiki has given me. So my plan moving forward is after sitting Shimpiden for a second time, I want to have retaken all 3 levels a second time. And my goal is to eventually start sharing Reiki with friends of friends, to start publicizing, going out and possibly offering Reiki circles, and basically trying to take the things that I've learned from Nathalie and Franz and from other teachers that I've studied with and spread it to the masses and make Reiki more accessible to everyone.
My name is Fortunato. I am just completed my Reiki 2. I started studying with Kelly McDermott with Animal Reiki level 1. And then she introduced me to Nathalie in New York to take my level 1 for humans. And then I worked with Nathalie through level 2 for humans. That's where I'm at now. My goal was ultimately to become a practitioner and give sessions to both humans and animals. The Reiki 2 class was very enlightening. I had the opportunity to not only work with Nathalie, but a few other Reiki practitioners who took the class, some of them for the second time, they're level 2. So I really got a view not only into the history of Reiki and working with the symbols and the mantras, but I also got to see how other practitioners took Reiki 2 and kind of made it their own, or took Reiki and made it their own. So the personalities in the class sort of dictated how their practice looked. And it was really interesting for me to kind of take a little bit from everyone and decide how I might want to move forward as a practitioner. My Reiki plans for the future are very open. I am not sure where this journey is going to take me. I may decide I don't want to practice professionally. I may decide I just want to practice Reiki for myself and with my dog and with the people that I know and love. But I may decide that I want to share Reiki with strangers and clients and friends of friends. So I'm keeping it very open. I really don't know where this is going to take me, but I have a feeling I'm going to keep studying Reiki and probably move on to a level 3. Oh, there's actually been several, but the gift for me is holding space for myself, ultimately really being able to take a moment, take many moments throughout the day and bring the focus back to the precepts, which I just resonate so deeply with me. And I've also been able to practice with my rescue dog who I've had for about 5 months. And I really truly believe it's just transformed her life as well as mine, because we carve out time every day to practice together. And she went from, really kind of a feral animal to just so grounded. She's just thriving. And that's been really powerful to see that transformation take place through Reiki.
Hi, Natalie. It's Parita Shah. I'm a Reiki master teacher in New York, and I had the pleasure of taking probably Reiki 1, 2, and 3 with you. I've reset them with you. I initially trained in Western lineages, and I've been practicing Reiki for about 7 years, and recently I got to take Reiki 2 with you again. So I wanted to resit it because I have the inspiration of teaching it sometime soon, and so I wanted to brush up on the teachings. I knew we would be doing a lot of meditation with the symbols, so I wanted to reconnect with their essence, and then I knew it would also give me the motivation to write my manual, and it gave me the time to do that during our training. I love Reiki too because there's we focus on the symbols, and then there's also distant energy healing, and there's this like opportunity to feel into the essence of each symbol, and I think each one of them kind of reminds you something about yourself. You remember that like grounding nature that you can have, or the interconnection that you can have with others. So I really enjoyed reconnecting with that. And then it's always fun to practice distant energy healing. And there's so many different techniques, different ways that people do it. So I got to try out some new ones with you. Yeah, if people can find like a Reiki circle near them, or just a little bit additional support between the trainings, I think it'll help them to practice what they've received, because the trainings are very condensed. There's a lot of information that's kind of packed all at once. And if you have a little support group or someone to practice with, like an accountability buddy, then that will help you to go a lot deeper with the teachings and actually have an experience with it, rather than just taking someone's word for what they say to be true about Reiki. So yeah, I think like you can take the teachings of Reiki and practice them like for years on end without going on to the next level. But like usually it's hard to find those circles, and most people will just jump onto the next level, because as students, that's usually what we think we need. We just need one more level. Oh, I think it's the ability to cope. We all go through so many stressors, just so much change, and I think Reiki's given me that ability to be more resilient mentally, emotionally, and physically, and to kind of, I think the word cope really stands out for me.
My name is Chris Gamble. I live in Maryland. I am a Reiki master teacher and practitioner at the Maryland Center for Reiki Training, which is located in Frederick, Maryland. Why I'm resitting is because I am really an eternal student. I love to learn, and I've just found that continuing my education in Reiki with Reiki classes, with reading books, has really helped me to deepen my own Reiki practice. And it's really helped to inform my teaching. And last year, I had the opportunity to attend a 4-day weekend with Francina, and did a resitting of my Shinpiden and a Reiki play day. I had a wonderful experience there. And it was there that I met you, Natalie. and connected with you. And when you offered this Reiki 2 class, I knew right away I wanted to come. I would say, especially sitting in this class, I was so grateful for you, Nathalie, and for your fantastic teaching, because for me to be able to sit in the class with you, I was able to see how you present the material to the students. I was able to see and observe how you lead the students in practice, and even how you answer their questions. And all of those things just really helped me to improve as a teacher. I think it's wonderful to be able to learn from other fantastic teachers, and we borrow things that we really enjoy, and it just really helps to refine our own teaching to make it better. I would say the biggest gift that Reiki has brought to my life is really the opportunity to teach. I teach Reiki 1 classes, and in the beginning of the classes, I'll talk to the students a little bit about what is Reiki, because in Reiki 1, even the idea of what is Reiki is a new concept to them. And I'll say things to them like, sometimes when people come to Reiki, they've heard of hands-on healing, and they think that's what Reiki is. Or sometimes they come to Reiki and they think the teacher's going to give me Reiki, like Chris is going to give it to me, I'll get it there in class. Like Reiki is somehow external. And I say to them, Reiki is actually your true self. It's your inner great bright light. It's your inner love and compassion. It's already within you. And in that moment as a teacher, as I'm looking out at everyone, you can kind of see them sort of perk up like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And then I'll say, what can happen to that light in life? It gets covered with a layer of anger, a layer of worry, a layer of fears and attachment. And as I look out, and you can see people's eyes kind of darken and they're nodding their heads like, oh yeah, that's happened to me. They can identify with what I'm saying. And then I'll tell them, but your light is there. It's always bright. It's always there, no matter how much muck in life is covering it up. And then I'll finish with saying, Reiki is a spiritual practice that helps you to uncover or lay bare that great bright light. And you can see like their eyes light up with that realization, like, oh my gosh, like I get it. I can do this. And as a teacher, it's so joyful and rewarding, to be able to sit in that space of a teacher and see the expression on the faces and just able to lead them through that whole day, with all the joys in the fruits of your Reiki practice. So that's really the gift that it's brought to me. All of that joy. It's wonderful.